You should all get a notification. Okay, right then. So I'm already sharing the our demo site. Everything here is identical to what you use in your own work, except for we have the new module turned on in this version. So we're going to focus on disrepair. Most of what we do is going to be in here, but there's also for the managers, there's quite a few settings that also affect disrepair, but I'm not going to go through the sort of the admin setting part of it. I'm just going to try and show you in the period we've got, without boring you all to death, the shortest possible end-to-end and the work that we've been doing over the sort of last 12 months, and then it'd be great to get your feedback. This is not the finished article. A bit like when we launched property licensing, Metastreet property licensing, you know, 2-3 years ago now, in terms of how far it's come through those weekly updates. You guys tell us, what about this? What about that? What about section 257s? What about, you know, so it will be continuous sort of development. But this is our first main version. London Borough Waltham Forest are using it. They've sort of been piloting it. They've got their own key drivers why they needed to get access to it first. So it's been well tested. There's a few bugs in there that I'm aware of, and we'll deal with those. Right. So here is the sort of officer view of a bunch of disrepair cases, but I'm going to start from a tenant's perspective, or from could be a member, a councillor, or it could be someone else, where they're able to, via a link, maybe on your website, or maybe you give them this link in the email, they can report a case to you of a housing issue. It's not just disrepair, the whole gambit. We'll struggle to find the best word to describe everything outside of property licensing. If anyone's got like the killer word or couple of words, maybe property improvement, I was thinking. But it starts, doesn't it, with often a complaint from a tenant, but it can also be used proactively, and Waltham Forest are using it in that way too, in terms of from their licensing visits. So we try to provide some sort of informative text. Assume I'm going to keep my tenant's hat on now for a minute, and so I'm going to go through everything we can in terms of the accessibility, look and feel, very much the same. So we ask them for a date in which they've reported the issue to their landlord. I'll just say that that's today's date. Everything's linked to UPRN, so it's linked back to property addresses, linked back to your gazetteer. So all the update work that we already do, both of you, in terms of new addresses going on the system, that's all been solved and will continue. So just pick an address, 20, please. And then we ask for their details. So I'll just call myself Mike, tenant, and I'll give them my. What we've tried to, the whole emphasis has been on trying to take away a lot of the sort of difficulties of dealing with a higher frequency of complaints that come in, and really offer you guys as much efficiency as possible in terms of dealing with those. So we're going to need to collect these details to start with, so we can communicate. This is
sorry, Russell, question from Lynn. Just wanted to confirm that. Can you see if you can see the comments? Just wants to confirm that this is standalone from licensing, and yeah, I mean that's right, isn't it? You know, this is for all properties with a UPRN.
Yeah, exactly. So it'll work for any residential property in your local housing authority area. Everyone. It's linked to licensing, but it's not. You don't need a license to use this part.
Okay, great.
Is that what you meant, Lynn?
Yeah, I did, because we've got, you know, obviously we've got borough-wide HMO licensing, but if we were to bring in selective, it's for like specific areas. So I wasn't sure if it was attached specifically to the license, you know, the license, and then a complaint that came in whilst the license was in situ, or whether it was just open to any type of disrepair. Yeah,
exactly. The latter. Most boroughs have got sort of areas that don't have licensing, and then of course there's that do have licensing, but you still need You still need to assess hazards and all that other stuff that you wouldn't be familiar with, but we've got that functionality which is going to show you. But yeah, okay, yeah, thank you. So we're just going to add address here. So where they know the landlord's name, that's helpful. I should put something.
Are these all mandatory fields, Russell?
So yeah, we do ask for the landlord's name, even if it's just Bob who comes on a Thursday to collect the rent.
Yeah.
We do ask for at least a mobile number.
Okay.
So yeah, we do try and squeeze out of the tenants or whoever's making the complaint in the same way with licensing to try and make sure that there's stuff coming through to be assessed. You can at least get started with. But if there's anything you think that actually we don't want it mandatory or we do want it mandatory, then that's relatively straightforward for us to do. So this one, for example, we don't know where the landlord lives. That's fairly common. So we've got to bypass that one. Then we've got a screen which I'm currently reviewing where we can the tenant or the person making a complaint can pick out the things that they want to complain about or raise an issue about. So let's go with damp and mold electric. So these we've used the most frequently raised complaints, but some of them we're going to have swapped out for things. This one here, particularly filthy and verminous, most tenants won't really know what that means. And we don't currently include illegal eviction and harassment, which I know, even though your teams may not necessarily deal with it, you probably will still need to know about that. So then we ask for some details from the person completing the form, what the issue is. Then the tenant or the person filling out the form can upload files, so photos of the issues. So let's just put one, and they can upload it in the same way that we upload documents for property licensing. Now as many photos as they like, and then they get an opportunity to review. This will be familiar for those who have used the front end of Metastreet, and then submit. And so that's how disrepair housing complaint form. So let's take that tenant hat off now, and I will revisit the system as an officer. So here we have a bit like property licensing, which is still here. We have a list of all the disrepair complaints that come in, and we can sort those in a similar way we can with property licensing. There is no restriction on who can see what. So no matter what role you've been given in Metastreet, you can see all of the complaints. A number of teams have duty rosters, so everyone needs to be able to see what's going on. We can search for addresses in the same way. If we're looking for something in particular, we can export that information. Then we see we've got different statuses. Who's the assignee? I'll get to urgent, non-urgent, and then oldest to newest. We just got David coming here. So some of you might say, well, how does this urgent issue get raised here? Okay, so this is something that we can do in settings. So you're able to, based on what the tenant has made a complaint about, you can automatically set it. So if it was say damp and mold or excess cold in the winter months, it will automatically come through as an urgent, as opposed to if it was at a peak of summer, excess cold may come through as a non-urgent. So you can set the prioritization in the system. So let's just go in and have a look at that.
Russ, just a question. There was one from Kelly, and also I was going to ask exactly the same question as well. Just in relation to things that aren't disrepair. So if someone wants to complain about a neighbour, maybe a neighbour that's hoarding or something, I guess partly it could be how the form is named, but obviously in that instance there might not be a landlord if it's a public health or nuisance issue. But I mean, I guess that will just be a tweak of the form.
Yeah, no, that's right. We can even look at tweaking the form. So you all, depending on how you're using it, there is another other section. So anything else can go in other, and they can describe what they're looking at. It's primarily to yeah. So yeah, we could work around that, work with that, I think. So I guess even if it's a accumulation, then you may know the landlord of the address next door, may know the owner of that address. It's helpful to have that. Anyway, sort of sideways there. Okay, so a bit like in property licensing, as the job comes in, we can assign it to someone. So let's try and find myself. And then once it's been assigned, we get a new screen that doesn't look like the other screens in a way, and I'll just talk you through this. So here we've got an overview, and down this left-hand side, we've got all the key information, some of which we've just entered as sort of the overview of the disrepair complaint that's come through. So we're still using the UPRN. It gets given its own unique reference. We can see here what the key issues have been raised, currently calling disrepair type, who it's been allocated, and the priority. We can change the priority, so if we decide actually that's not an urgent. And then we've got information, who it was received from, when, the landlord's details. I guess that could also be landlord or stroke neighbour details. And then the date that we were contacted, some details about that, and then links to photos that have been uploaded so people can review that. And then we've got the option to do stuff. So here for the first time, before I get into inspections or anything else, we're able to email, and I'll show you that, or create bespoke letters. We can also make file notes, or we can record telephone calls. So I'll get to these two. So if our first response might be to email the tenant, so the system remembers the details that have been entered. So we've got my tenant's details. We can copy in other people if you wanted to, and we can add our own subject, whatever that might be. And for those that are familiar with setting up the using these tokens in the email, in the licensing section where we're able to adjust the draft and final licenses, we've got the same here. So let me just take one step. So you can create templates, as many templates as you like, different scenarios that you come across. One of them might be disrepair complaint. And so you can see here that automatically brings through the text you're looking for. We can reselect Mike the tenant. I've already got Haringey in there. And then we can just, the first response might be, thank you for your making a complaint, and we'll give them a reference. We could ask for additional information to be uploaded, and I'll show you this, how that works. So this token here, when the tenant receives the email, they'll press on that link and they'll be able to upload additional documentation, stuff that you may have asked for. So on this occasion, we might ask for a tenant agreement. We can sign it off, so have your email signature in there. So it's much more bespoke than the automated emails that go out in the property licensing section. You can literally add anything to this first email you wanted, and that's how it would go out. So that's quite a big step forward for us. And then we can put reminder dates in as well. So this is something new. So we can drop a date in where we think, okay, if I send this email now, then maybe by the 19th of March, I should have had a response. And so I can create myself a reminder. And then we can make a note what that reminder is, to do something, not to do something, and we can send that email. And then once that email is sent, the system records that email. You can see here, everything that I've just sent, it's gone with the email, and we get the same sort of loading of that information directly into the audit trail. And then we can also see document store in the same way. So as we create things in Metastreet, they automatically go into the document store. So we don't have to worry about the upload and all the other wasted time that we go through. And here you can see there's the reminders being dropped in. So we can complete this at a time, when you don't need that reminder anymore. So that's emails. So we could unlimited number of templates, lots of cool functionality where we can get tenants to click links, upload documents. Those documents, once they click those links, will come directly straight back into this screen that you're looking at. So you'll see those maybe in this occasion it was a copy of the tenancy agreement. Copy of the tenancy agreement will be delivered into the case that you're dealing with. So you're not having to manage across different emails. They'll all be in the case that you're dealing with. It's also like some by magic dropping into your case and files that we used to have, without having to manage all of that process. So we can also create letters. So again, we've got 10 letter templates. So we've got one letter template here, hello. So we can choose that. We can shortcut by inserting customer's name or inserting landlord's name. So this is our first letter to the landlord, whatever that might be. Insert the landlord's address if we got that, or a customer's address. We didn't add one for the landlord, so but that's why it's helpful to get that information, because we can use it now. We can put the data letter in a bit like we do with property licensing, and we can give it a title, and then with whatever the template is that you've created. So the beauty is with the templates, and hopefully you've seen that with the templates that we started to put into Metastreet that you can adapt, is that because lots of people, we're more sort of dispersed as a workforce, we're not all in the same office. Where if there's a template's been updated, someone has a good idea about phrasing something a certain way or another procedure, as soon as those templates are edited in Metastreet, wherever people are working, might be Australia or in the office, they'll all be the same for everyone. So then we can preview that letter in the same way we do Metastreet. So obviously we'll get it to, well, template it up in the same way that we do with the other documents to make it to keep it on brand for your individual authorities. And then once you're happy, then we can continue. So we can still we still got the print service for those that are utilizing the print service. So who working from home and they just want their letters, documents to go direct from the print room, we can do that. So and then if we're sending manually, then we get a copy of it created here, PDF, which we can print out. And here's another reminder that we can use. So let's put a date in here. So this is a reminder to follow up on whatever this letter is. Then we send letter. Have I done wrong there? Let's enter a date. Oh, that's clever of me. And then you can see a letter's gone in. And then the other two bits of functionalities, we can, if we're having a phone call, we want a contemporaneous note of that phone call, we can drop that in here with the precise time. We can just hit now. And then whatever, landlord shouting down the phone at me, said he's not going to do the work. And we can save that one. And the same, we just add a note. So a note might be maybe a caseload review or something. We're talking, just a file note can go in, whatever that might be. And so we've got the same WYSIWYG, so we can format that as we want. So that's the case management functionality. As information comes in, we'll be able to see that and we'll be able to address that. So now I'm going to go on to, unless there's any burning questions on that part, tell me, Geraint, if I've missed anyone.
Just on the, I'm presuming there's like template wise, it doesn't cater for notices.
Not yet. So notices is the next, like, final chapter that we've already started on. So that's going to be all the templates for all the statutory notices, and it's also for financial penalties, calling prosecutions, and debt recovery. That is the final thing that we're working on. So this is the sort of.
But I mean, I guess at present, so have you got a document store similar to licensing? So if you were to say now, if you were to serve a notice, you could upload that document to the case.
100%. So here, this will be familiar with pretty much everyone. So we can upload documents, whatever that might be, like you said, the statutory notices or other things. So we can use it in that way. We just haven't, like, in terms of like what can be done. I think with the statutory notices is similar to what can be done with the notices, the draft and finals, for a range of different bits of legislation. Yeah, that's the next step. But you're right, we can still upload anything into the system, the enforcement work that's been gone on, etc., etc. So let's just go back to where we were. Okay, so we've had the reporting of something not good, and then we're able to communicate that directly from the system. We don't need other systems. We don't need Outlook open. We don't need anything else, we can do that, but all directly through Metastreet now. And so now might be the point where we need to create that inspection. So it might be your central team that's managing most of the complaints that came in, or it might be that as an officer you want to do that. So we do that by allocating it to someone. So I'll allocate it to myself. This will be fairly familiar to you. And you can see now we've created that inspection, and this is where I have to flip over to the to my iPad. But is there any other questions there while I do the flip over?
Yeah, there's a couple. So just a good point from Lynn, just advising that you could change the landlord details to responsible person. I guess you could put both, couldn't you? I think Matthew asks if there's a property that's already been licensed and a disrepair complaint comes in for that same address, will the system flag that at all, or would it be a case of searching for licenses as well?
So what we're about to do is to integrate the audit trails. So whatever happens in the disrepair also is shared across all the audit trails. So by just quickly looking at the audit trail, you'll be able to see, I'm going to probably float to the top the key bits of information. So has there been a license? Is there any cautionary contacts? I don't know if you guys are familiar with the cautionary contacts details that there are that you can identify in terms of the interested parties, some of that important information. So I think that's something we're definitely going to do. But like I said earlier, we're open to all good ideas in terms of, particularly for those boroughs that have got lots of licensing, how you maximize your licensing data for all your disrepair work. So there's harmony between the two as much as possible.
Couple more questions as well. Mark is asking what the tenants can see, if they can. Is there a portal similar to the licensing where they can log on? Can they see any of the documents that we upload? Presuming not.
So what can the tenants see? So they get once they submit that disrepair form, they get a response. They don't have a portal in the same way that landlords have a portal, where they could pick up stuff, only because there isn't as many things. But we are considering providing tenants with updates in terms of, but it does depend on what you want, I think, because you don't want to raise expectations too high. And that's partly why we've got the email functionality where we can set those templates to notify tenants at certain points and make that really as easy as possible, and then that to be recorded. But again, if there's any good ideas in that, I'm completely open to that.
Two more quick ones, and I'll stop interrupting you for a bit. Lynn asks, can you link repeat complaint history? So is it quite easy to view sort of history over the years? I guess is what you're trying to say, Lynn. Another one from Kelly as well, where the landlord's details are not provided and you need to sort of go back in and add those. Is there presumably an interested party section?
Yeah, so there is. I'll show you that when I log back into the system. Yeah, that's a good point. We've got a whole section for that. So remind me of that, please, Garrett, once I get back into the system. So I'm just going to run through now. So what I've done is we've gone from tenant to sort of central office in terms of managing, dealing with those initial queries, communicating with landlord tenant if we need to. But this is the point where we send, we decided there's enough information that we do need to go and have a look at the property. So as part of this shift, we now have inspection, a different inspection type. So we have a disrepair inspection type. And so you're looking at my screen here, and you can see that we've got both the tenants and landlord details that are more obviously shown under contacts, and we can communicate with those by that. We have a slightly different reference, and we have from property licensing, and we'll get to that. You can see the inspection type is disrepair. It brings across the disrepair categories. So we've still got the electrical fault, damp and mold, and the summary of the notes that were provided with the complaint. Now this one you can see here has actually got a selective license. So where there is a license, back to your point, Lynn, it will tell you that there is a license in place for that property. And it will tell you actually the status of that license as well, which I think is quite helpful. And you've got one of the key conditions: one person living in one household. So for those that are using the app, this would be fairly, probably done more, you certainly would have done more inspections than me. So you can see we're about to start the inspection. Now for this one, we don't get all of the room detail in the same way that we do for the property licensing inspection. One of my questions to you guys is, would you value that, having all the room detail? That's something we're discussing internally. So that would be interesting to get some feedback on that. So we've got, let's just crack on now. That this hasn't massively changed. So I'm just going to make my way through this. My other question, be good to get some feedback on, is for disrepair type complaints. This property overview is mandatory, so we still have to fill it in before we complete the section. Is that what users want, or is that too onerous? That's something else I'm trying to work out.
Just while you're doing that, Russ, I mean, I was thinking the same thing on the licensing inspector app, whether, because you have to click through everything, for the property details. But then I actually thought to myself, this is actually quite good because it does jog your memory when you're in the property. So I decided not to raise that as a suggestion. But I mean, potentially there's certain things that you could have completed.
Yeah, there's definitely two schools of thought. Mostly practitioners don't want it, and then the managers do want it, broadly speaking. But I think I'll find a sort of compromise if possible. But personally, for me, the health and safety questions I think probably should be mandatory, partly because the ones I'm doing now, partly because they're easier. You just have to make a selection really, and I think it's just really helpful to have that information. And I'm sure you guys that are doing a lot of these, you can do it without even looking now. So okay, so we've got that file. So then we can add a room. So if we've gone there for, let's say we've got damp and mold complaint, whatever we say, we've got electrical and damp and mold. So ground floor right, in terms of the location, we go into the room, and so currently ask for a size of the room, so that most of you are working out if it's single or double. And then we've got the shared or exclusive, and then your amenity in the room. And now we can start. We're going to add some hazards because we've got the hazard assessment functionality that I want to show you. So I just need to do that. So let's add an electrical one, so we can do that. That's bad for that. And let's do some others. And so we deficiency, severity, remedy, time frame, finish. And then maybe in the same room we've also got the damp and mold hazard. So let's put that one in. So I'll have a pre-prepared photo here. And then we can go deficiency, severity. I'm not taking these serious, I'm just adding fairly randomly this information. So we just finished that. And then so we've got the markers complete. Before we finish, we'll just add one more room just so I can show you what separate room functionality. So let's do it as a living room. And then same. Far left. And put kitchen. And then we can do hazards. So let's add another damp and mold. So we've sort of got an aggregated damp and mold issue across a number of rooms. Okay, so that's that done. And then we can, so the benefit of not having all the rooms listed in the property is you haven't got to go into them all and confirm everything. So that's something worth, that's one of the benefits, I guess. So let me just review in the same way the information that we've added, we finalize exactly the same way, and then we sync in exactly the same way. So we're just uploading the photos. And while we're doing that, I'm going to go back across now to back into the mothership, into the cloud software. So we were talking about interested parties. So here are the interested parties. We can change the reporting customer, the landlord, go in and add details that were initially missing as the case develops. We can add other information as it becomes available. So
Russ, we can't see the
oh, I thought I'd done
browser.
Thank you. I thought I'd swapped across. Was it not? I think it just cancelled my. Is that better?
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. Okay, so I was speaking, but you wouldn't have been able to see the for these cases here on the right hand side. We can see we've got interested parties. So we've got all the information here related to. We can add to that, which I was starting to do. We can go in and edit. So if we develop more information about the landlord, we can do that there. The tenant changes, potentially we could do that, or we could just add as many interested parties as we like. We get some other. We need to tweak this and add second tenant or something to this. So now, so this is where we're going to try and have a look at inspections, hazard assessment, and the what we're calling the landlord report, which I've spoken to a lot of people about, but until now it's always been just like this describing the future. But hopefully we can be able to see that now. So this is the inspection we've just completed. See, it's synchronized, so we're able to go into that. We can create another inspection at any time, and so you can see that it's identified. We've got damp and mold, and we've got the electrical hazard. So we can go into each of these hazards. We've got two deficiencies, so we identified that damp and mold hazard in 2 rooms. You remember, so we've got those separated out there, but we only score once. So that we can see here we've got the property age and the property type. We will soon be loading the averages. Now we've got those 2 resolved. At the moment, where you have to add the scores manually, so take the average out of the operating guidance. If you're going to deviate from the operating guidance, we can save that. So class of outcomes. Finally, it works the last one out for you. So that's the scoring, and then we get the category and the rating and the overall score that's provided for you here. It's like I said, I think we need a little bit of improvement by offering the averages to start with and allow people to deviate from the averages rather than going. But like I said, it's the first version, so that's where we got to. So we're able to have a look at what we entered in terms of those hazards, in terms of the deficiencies and remedies and the severity. If you want to see the photos, at the moment we have to go to inspections here and see a copy of the inspection. Oh, actually, we don't. We can go to we should be able to go to documents, and we should see the inspection report. So If you want to see, now one of the things I'm quite keen on is trying to make some of those, the key hazard photos, available within the assessment screen. So if you're looking at the guidance and worked examples, you've also got the photos right in front of you. At the moment, we need to go down into see, it's a very similar report as you get with property licensing. So maybe review that or have that open on a slightly separate screen. So let me just move this up. Do I want to do that? There we go. Okay, so let's go back to where we were. Into inspections again, so you can see inspections, and then we've got overview. So we scored out the hazard. Let's have a look at the electrical hazard. Same process. Now, because we've got the property type, property age and type, should be able to get the averages in. If anyone's got all the scoring on Excel, that'd be super helpful, because at the moment we're having to scrape it all out of a PDF, the operating guidance. So if anyone's got the all the scoring on Excel, I'd be grateful for it. Let me just pick out, just fill out this. And then we finish, and then we get score, very high score, to the rating. So now that's done, and we can see we can now that section's complete, and we've got done. We've got our ratings, and this now we can create a report. So the report will include those things that you want to report on. So this is the report, the landlord report, that's going to go off to the landlord for them to action. So because they're all Cat 1s, they're all mandatory, we're going to want all of those dealt with. And then we can put a target response date in. So let's give them 10 days. And then we can create the report. So here's the report now dropped into here. We can open that and we can preview that. And so this is designed as sort of an MOT failure, where it's got all the key issues that you've identified. A lot of that information coming directly from the app, in terms of the risk, the location, what the actual defect is, the deficiency, and then what they need to do to address that. And we can edit all of this, and I'll show you how we can do that before we create the report. And then you see we've got a slightly different one for the electrical hazard, taking a similar approach and time frame. So we can update the report. So if you want to go in and make changes, then we can do that, and we can change it from discretionary to mandatory, or we can change the do that. That's a good question. I do it in here, go into deficiencies, and then we can change severity. We can move this over to other if you wanted to specify something more detailed, for example. So the report, understand that whatever's going to go out to the landlord has to be fully editable. You need to be able to, it can't be completely automated. You need to have sort of control over exactly what you're going to have asked to be done. So let's get that finished. All right, so now we're in a position where we can send that report via email. So let's try and do that now. So here's the report. We've got a send action button here. You can see just about as I hope. So we can use either a letter or an email to communicate with the landlord. Let's pick a letter. Again, we're going to get templates, so you can set all your templates up with all the wording. If you want to go really strong, or you want the first letter about hazards to be slightly weaker, all of that stuff can be factored in. And then we can again use the shortcuts in terms of insert customers' details and the date of the letter. So if they're going to go out in the future, We can add a future date on here. Let's just say it's today. And then give it a title. And then this one, you can see it hasn't brought through much of the template, but we can. Why didn't that happen? That's because I selected no on the templates, but of course, much easier to use templates. So we're calling this a hazard notification letter. So it's a bit like the minded to notice, where in some cases notice we go straight to enforcement. If it's total slum and you get there as multiple offences, then you may be straight into okay, that's getting a financial penalty notice. This particular section has been designed for maybe the 75% of the cases, like I call it the bottom of the pyramid, the majority of the work that you do, where you can nudge the landlord into compliance. Just one, make them aware, take their ignorance away, and then also make it clear that if they don't do the work, then there's going to be consequences. Maybe 7 out of 10 landlords can be driven into compliance just through that process, but the problem is there's so much of that is just very difficult to manage. So this whole process is trying to make that part as easy as possible. So for the 25% of landlords that you're going to have to take all the way, you can create more time for that group. And of course, for those that have got having to measure outcomes, to show the value of your service by demonstrating clearly how many properties that you've brought back into repair, or how many hazards that you removed. Anyway, so let's just go through that again, but using the template this time, because that's going to help unlock some of the information I want to show you. So we're doing just about okay for time. We're nearly there. So I say that a lot, I know. So this is going to add in. So we're going to add landlord, dear landlord. So it's going to pull that from list of tokens that we've talked about before to help speed up the process and improve accuracy. And we're going to be able to add we've got a token here for the property address. So it's going to pull the property address, and we've got the disrepair reference going to get dropped in. This one's going to say we inspected your property, so it's going to insert the inspection date, and it's going to include a landlord review link. So this is the bit where we're going to put the burden on landlords to demonstrate that the hazards that you've already been and witnessed, that they're their problem to deal with, and they need to demonstrate to you, the local authority, that have been addressed in the least cost intensive way possible for you, without having to revisit. Of course you can revisit, of course you can still do any of those things if you think you're being told lies. But I'll show you, we have included a declaration, hopefully to help reduce the chance of that. So we can preview letter in the same way as we can with licensing. I went to that, and we can just continue. Again, we've got the print service option, and then we can have a look at the covering letter, and we can also have a look at the report. So we're going to send both letter and the report. In the letter, this is the template. Ignore the way it's templated up. So obviously currently got Metastreet logos and stuff all over it, but we wouldn't make these templates work for you. And you can see here now, I'm going to just exit out of. So I'm going to send these letters. So maybe they've gone off to the print room. Maybe you've printed them out locally and they've got in an envelope. So we can go back to. Let me just make sure I've got a copy of that. You see, both of those documents recorded here at the very top of your case timeline. So we can just open the new copy of that. I'm going to just exit out here just to make sure I don't confuse the system. So as a landlord, I receive this letter from the council. I've been naughty. I know that this is those that can be nudged into compliance, not the hardcore that probably just throw it in the bin or whatever. So it encourages them to use the link to feedback to the council that they've addressed the things that have been identified in the report. So all of this is completely customizable. The wording, everything. You choose what you put in this letter. Super strong, softer, however you choose. You could even have one of each. So I'm a landlord now. I've just clicked the link and I'm back into your council site, taking me straight there. And now it's going to ask me, the landlord, to demonstrate to the authority that those hazards that I've been told about have been dealt with. So I needed this repair reference, a bit like in property licensing when you're doing a representation. That goes in here. So they should have the letter in front of them. Should be fairly easy for them to push it into the system. They confirm that it's the same property they're dealing with. That's exactly the same. Confirm that these are my details, so there's not opportunity for them to update those. And so here we've got the hazard review. So we're asking the landlord to confirm to us that the damp and mold due to this in this location has been reviewed, not reviewed, and removed or no longer applicable. So let's assume that I accept that it has existed and I've been around there and I've addressed it. I can confirm the day that it's been done. So I was there today, and I can add notes about that. I can upload documents. So if it's maybe a new consumer unit that you've asked for, we should for the electrical hazard, then you might want a copy of the commissioning certificate. So let's not go and add one for this, but you can let me let's do it just so we can see the process. So let's do that, and then now so you can see it's moved on to the second same hazard, separate issue. So we're focusing on the defect. So again, confirm it's removed. Ask them to add a date. So it's not, we're actually asking specifically all of the issues you identified room by room that they've been addressed. So, and then information, and then we'll just say sea loss. And then the last one you see here was the electrical hazard. So we're going to say that's removed, the date in which it was done, and some confirmation text. And then this one might be a copy of that electrical cert that we asked for, maybe in the letter or as part of the remedy within the report. So install new consumer unit and provide a copy of home condition electrical report, whatever you technically require. So that can go in there, and then they get to review the final screen, and then they continue. Okay, so this is where we're going to ask them to provide some declarations to try and weed out those, who are happy to tell non-truths. So this is information related to functions under the Housing Act, false and misleading, so potentially teeing up an offence if here, and then other declarations for queries necessary. So this one here I quite like, but if there's any fraud, attend the council that something's been done when it hasn't been done, that's potentially a fraud case as well. Anyway, so just trying to stress the importance of telling the truth at this point and teeing them up that if you get non-truths, then it's an offence. And then so for most landlords, if they've done the right thing and they have done the repair, you've got the information you need to review that repair, maybe certificates that are followed up. Now, if I'm a really bad landlord, I'm not going to probably sign up to this at all. So they're not going to respond. But a bit like property licensing, those that don't respond to your request are going to be in that population of the 25% that need the enforcement. So by the very fact that they don't respond to this, probably puts them into a category where you can go out and sort of get stuck into them. So I'll just take my landlord hat off and go back as a council officer again. So I can just dive in here, and you can see we've had a hazard review form received, and the system's validated it. So we can have a look at this now. This is the information I provided. And so now we're in a position to, we can have a look at our reminders before we make a decision maybe to close the case. We might want to communicate back with the landlords, thank them for their certificates and let them know you're satisfied with their response using an email template. I think we've just left all of that open to you to sort of try and make maximum use of the functionality. And then the important part is getting to the end of a case, and we can just review our reminders, make sure that we've, let's do that, complete, just find the window, and then we can close the case with some information, so we can say it's resolved, so the hazards have been addressed that we've identified, add some notes in here, and all of this is reportable in the same way. So ultimately closed. So that was quite quick, but it was within the hour. So I hope at least 2 people are still awake, and I'll be happy to do any questions if you've got some.
Russell, can I just ask one with regards to reporting, which is obviously a key thing. So things like number of Cat 1s, Cat 2s removed, number of statutory notices served.
Yeah.
Is that sort of functionality that's either part built in or will be built in? And my second question is whether there's the payment integration works on the disrepair module if we want to raise an enforcement charge.
Yeah, good question. So in terms of reports, yeah, we have added some new reports for disrepair specifically. So we've got a disrepair caseload report. We're probably going to add another one, but we have the inspections, which has got all the category 1, category 2 hazard location information in it. So you already have access to that for those. And we're also then able to match those up against cases that have been closed in the review. And so effectively being able to say this many hazards have been dealt with over this amount of time. So what our experience of Water Forest, we may need to, they're using those 2 reports together. To have a single report just to make that just even easier to use. The other thing is all this will be available via our via the API, all this information as well, so you could potentially plug it into your business intelligence stuff. Now, in terms of can we collect money off that landlord? If they've applied for a license, yes, you can, but we need their contact details to do that. We can't currently collect money from people that don't have like a relationship with property licensing, but that part is coming. That will be the debt collection module we're going to try and add on. It's like part of the final part around enforcement. So the enforcement regulation model with the debt collection.
Lynn's you got your hand up.
Sorry, Ross, I've got to go at 3 because I've got another meeting. Just a couple of things quickly. I do think the property overview section, albeit that it probably is a bit of a pain, is probably something that's worth keeping just because somebody goes off or somebody else is picking up the case. There's quite a lot of information in there then I think that would be useful for that person if they're having to make decisions. But also I think it just offers a bit of consistency. So the quality of the inspection being undertaken then by all different types of officers that would be using it is a bit more consistent. I think it's probably quite helpful just from that perspective as well. Will we be able to produce the information for purposes of subject access requests? So is everything that's on there downloadable in principle?
Yeah, so we can, nothing's changed in terms of we can still manage and archive contacts. We have an upgrade coming to specifically deal with subject access requests. I don't know if your team receives more than average.
I don't know, we seem to have got a lot at the moment, which is why it's at the forefront of my mind.
Yeah, so we do have a module that's going to be just about addressing that part, which there is a sort of a get around way we can do at the moment, and of course we can go in the back and delete stuff if it's like right to be forgotten type stuff. But yeah, we're still working on that part, but what we've got at the moment is sort of what applies to disrepair.
Yeah, and just the other thing, only because it's cropped up today in a different meeting, is so we're a bit, because we've got Metastreet and the rest of my service are still working on Northgate. It was raised today about the fact that people who are using Northgate won't have access necessary to some of the information that's property relevant to them, so antisocial behaviour officers, for example. the reason that came up was because we were looking at health and safety alerts that we've got on Northgate, so potentially violent tenants or situations where you may not want to visit on your own. Will this system allow us to have those type of health and safety alerts put on there?
Yeah, so we already have that functionality via, if you go property licensing,
Yeah.
and then we go into interested parties.
Yeah.
You can add that. I think you can do it in both sections.
Oh, okay.
So interested parties, for those that haven't seen it, where does it appear? You have to go against the individual, and there is a, where do we do it? Cautionary contact.
Okay, yeah.
So there, so we can, in case anyone didn't, so if anyone obviously is dealing with someone that's problematic, we can add that flag there and put details of it, and then it appears as a which is also going to go into the app as well at some point, so officers can see it as get flagged as an individual concern.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Russell. That's been fantastic from my
No worries.
catch up with you later. Thanks.
Yeah, no, my pleasure. Nice. Thanks for hanging around, Lynn. Just saying, just for the managers. So one of the things is, because it's like brand, pretty new, we still have probably got a couple of months in terms of feedback. For those local authorities that want to give it a try, we're just saying fine, use it, no cost. Until we get it to a point where you guys are saying, yeah, this is as good as property license, brilliant, then we'll hold off issuing invoices.
Okay, great. Count me in.
Great stuff. Well, I hope it helps you guys. Is there any more questions?
I think just one for me about floor plan functionality, whether there's any plan for that.
Yep.
I like a pen and paper and taking a picture of it.
Yeah, no. That's the one thing I'm super conscious of, partly because I've been talking about the sketch functionality in the app for ages, and we still haven't delivered it. The next version of the app is going to include the ability to draw, including floor plans, to annotate and use a markup functionality, which we can create plans and be able to save those into documents. So the next decent upgrade, assuming we don't have to do any sort of rapid upgrades because Apple's changed security settings or anything like that, the next meaty upgrade that we're working on right now will include the markup functionality, which will allow you to do floor plans.
So Miss Off Manager as well, who was just asking what happens if a landlord does not comply with all of the issues. So I guess, is that what you mean, Andrew, whether just tick one of them as resolved or not responds at all?
No, that's a good question. Sorry, I sort of failed at the end of that demo because I didn't show you that process of ticking off. I'm sort of doing it while we're talking about something else. So there is a review functionality that I just started to complete, where you're able to tick off the hazards that have been addressed, and then you're also able to mark those hazards that have not been addressed as not addressed, and therefore you might want to continue your pursuit of that landlord around that one issue, but you have marked those other two hazards as being dealt with. So that's I was using that bit of functionality. I'm just going to find out where I was when I was doing it. Oh, I've already signed it off. So you can see here, I think this is the review landlord's response. So there is a review process. So you can still mark that things haven't been addressed fully in there. Because, yeah, like landlords always want to not do something fully, don't they? I understand that.
Mark has got a question.
Hey, Mark.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, a couple of questions. Is it only available on the Apple browser, same as licensing, or are you going to give us access to other systems?
So do you mean the Inspector app?
The Inspector, yeah.
Yeah, Inspector is still Apple only, Mark.
Okay.
Yeah, I think. Yeah. I'm
That's
aware
fine.
of that task. Just there is the cost of building it on Android as well is very high. We have to sort of remake everything. We can't really make the numbers work at the moment.
Okay. And can it deal with overcrowding hazards as well?
So yeah, so we've got all 29 hazards in the app. So yeah, all of that should be. I've not tried to do an overcrowding assessment, but it should. The actual mechanisms are slightly different, aren't they? But the same scoring should be applied. But yeah, you'd be welcome to try it. I can. One of the things I was going to suggest is maybe if I can just turn it on for your training site, and then you can have a play with it and feedback. Obviously, your feedback.
That'd be very.
If I can just say one
useful.
One thing, because I'll forget to say it otherwise, and I'll hate myself for it, is that because of the way the Inspector app has to synchronize the account that you use the Inspector app with, we can only synchronize it to one instance at the moment. So if you're going to test the app using your training site, you need to create another, use a separate email in the training site to use. You can still use the iPad and still access all the same functionality in the app. You just need to create another, use a different Inspector username and password, different credentials. Otherwise the app doesn't quite know where the mothership is. So I should say that. Hopefully that made sense.
I was just going to ask Russell, the enforcement module, when do you think that is likely to be ready?
I think we've done all the planning, Ian. So I think in reality, the end of this year is our objective.
Okay.
So that will be, yeah.
And would it be a case then that for any cases that we've got on disrepair here that haven't come to a successful resolution, that there'll be some way that can be linked to, because the next step then is it moves on to enforcement, doesn't it? So that there'd be some kind of link built in to allow that to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So everything is completely tied together within your instance. So there should be no dead ends. It will just, you'll move the case over into creating maybe a section 1112 Housing Act notice, or we know might be an EPA or whatever it'll be fully integrated in the way it is. The other things we just need to be conscious. We're conscious that probably government's going to change some bits soon. Maybe a new decent home standard, other bits and pieces. So got to keep on top of any changes that come as well. And government will probably get about 2 weeks notice of it as well. Yeah, but so the whole issue of integration is important to me. So I think we still need to do some more work to integrate the disrepair with the licensing module. So just more information is naturally carried across. I think combining the audit trails and then floating the most important stuff to the top is one way of doing that. But if anyone's, most of the best functionality in property licensing modules, people have been saying over the last few years, what about this? What about doing that? So I'd encourage you to have a play, and if there's anything you think that would work really well, let me know. Just email me, and we'll look into it.
That's great. Just one last quick question, Russell. It's probably all there, but just as regards reporting on this, there's a way that, like with the licensing, you can look at how many cases each officer has, what status they're at. It's probably back in one of the front screens.
Yeah, so most of what you just said there is covered in this new report that you wouldn't have seen. You can still see my screen, right? Yeah. So that that covers the officer, the when, where, and some of the how. So the initial response time, the nature of this rare complaint. In terms of the hazards, all the hazards are dealt with via the inspection report. So the number of hazards, the severity, and other bits. What we're going to look at doing is trying to create a report that pulls those two things together. So we've just got maybe hazards for disrepair. I just find a way of report on. But you can use the two reports in tandem to do that now.
Okay. I might have missed it, but was fire safety in as one of the disrepair hazards right at the start?
So that's a good
One
point.
of the hazards.
You'd have to use other, but I've already just finished your selects. I've just added a
Okay.
tip this morning to have that sort of the most commonly identified issues. We've got some room to tweak those, to change those. So if we've not got that list quite right, it's not a huge issue for us to, like I was saying, swapping out the filthy verminous for something else, or there's one for flooding that could become fire. That they're sort of, in my mind, tweaks that we can do quite easily. But getting your feedback on what what doesn't work, and would be really helpful. So can I just ask you, Ian, does your team use the Metastreet training site?
For the disrepair? No,
No,
not at the moment.
For property license. Okay. I think you do have a training site there. I'm just wondering what's
We
the
do
best.
have it. Yeah, I think, well, Gaz, you probably know better than I do. We did use it for licensing and training
we used
site,
it right
didn't
at
we?
the beginning, before we went live. We used it for a bit, but to be honest, since then we've not really needed it. I mean, it was so easy to pick up. It's so straightforward anyway. We've not used it a great deal since.
No worries.
So, and the training site is different to Sandbox, isn't it? 'Cause it's our dedicated.
Yeah,
So-
I've given you access to Sandbox, but might be, in terms of, if you wanted, I can happily turn the disrepair functionality on in your training site, and that will give you it will just be you guys using it instead
Okay,
of.
yeah, that'll be happy. That'll be brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay. Should I do the same for Haringey? Is there any, Matthew?
Yeah, we spoke about that the other day, Russell, didn't we?
Yeah.
So you'll send me the emails on that. So I'll get back to you on that, and we'll use that functionality, please. Yes.
Is there any other, lots of like very experienced practitioners out there? Is there anything that people saw that didn't make any sense to them, or things like, or anything that they really liked?
Russell, there was one thing right at the beginning. We tend to allocate cases between HMOs and single family properties.
Yeah.
Is there any way of putting on the form that the tenant fills in as to whether they're living in an HMO or a single dwelling?
Yeah, that's a good point. I think many local authorities would take that approach. How did it know that it was a HMO? Maybe because of the license type. I'll look into that. Mark. That's a good point.
Okay, thank you.
Russell, I wanted to ask whether very beginning in the reporting, when some of the information might be mandatory, and you said that we want to extract as much information as we want to, but would it allow people to move on the reporting without actually filling some of them, or all of them, or not all of them, but some of them?
So from memory, the ones you have to put something in that box. It doesn't necessarily have to be the whole truth. So it was the landlord's name and a telephone number. But if they haven't got that, they could put landlord's name, don't know, and telephone number. They could put 000, and it still would allow them to submit. But it does try and get focused minds around.
I see. Would obviously from that page, from the tenant's point of view or complainant's point of view, would that mean that they will be instructed to just put not applicable or don't know, or people just give up and don't report?
There was a couple. We've got a couple where people were able to say I don't know. So where it asks for the landlord's address, there's a short a bypass that says I don't know the landlord's address. But there's fairly like getting feedback from obviously officers like yourself that are very experienced in terms of that balance between getting as much information as you can. That you haven't got that case you can't do anything with, as opposed to not being too tight that you put people off
Yes, absolutely. Yes, that's very, very important. Particularly having that option of uploading the information maybe into the follow-up email response, because we as standard request certain information anyway, and it's very useful in that reporting system. That if we were totally into that reporting system, it would be so much easier to deal with, because there is people sometimes are so wound up in their own problems that they report into our like a email inbox without actually putting the address. And obviously further down the line, if we have HHSRS and that on the system, that would make life so much easier. That would be great.
Is your point then, Marta, that to have upfront be able to configure through settings what documents we ask for or don't ask for? So we might say we don't ask for any documents. Other councils might say we want tenancy agreement very least.
That would be, because we ask for tenancy agreement and the standard, but also the option needs to be given that people don't have tenancy agreements, and it's still, you know, the occupancy make a tenancy. But if they have it, we would like to have a copy up front.
No, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm just going into the settings page. Forgive me, I got some right in my eyes. I need some blinds. This is where we're able to configure the different types of issues and priority. So we can do something similar for the where we ask for the tenant to provide documents. So we can add.
So the photographs.
But also copies of documents or photographs. Because you know some people love to provide loads of information and others.
Yes, of course.
Nothing at all. So.
But also, when you actually already mentioned filthy and verminous, could it be actually the issues of pests and then specify the pests?
That's exactly what
like flies, cockroaches, whatever, and have a list of pests.
That's right. Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. Yeah, so that's I've already made those tweaks. This is our first run through. So we used the list from Newer of like the top 15 most common issues, and that's how they were categorized. But they don't make any sense. Well, some of them don't make much sense to tenants. So they've been.
And in the standard correspondence, the system will be able to upload all the type of notices that we use, not just housing part 1 and others.
So at the moment you can load absolutely anything you want into the document store. So if you go into any given address in disrepair or in licensing, if you go to view all documents, and then you can upload documents. We can also manage documents for the GDPR if we're going to sort of start wiping records after 5-7 years, whatever the choice is. That's part of our GDPR upgrade that's on its way. But anything can go on here. So like you said, copies of notices, witness statements, anything, literally anything can be loaded in there.
I mean, from my point of view as well, Russell, I really like the functionality that you can actually email directly from the system. We can actually enclose a copy of the actual report, because I think you know we all know that sometimes landlords don't actually visit the property, and I think they actually get an inspection report through with a covering email, and there's actually photographic evidence that actually shows what we're actually reporting on. I think that generally will focus people's minds a lot more than when we have a telephone conversation. I think it carries a lot more weight. And I think that side of it is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, and I'm thinking you can also use it the other way for good landlords, where you visit a property and everything perfectly, and you could send an email saying, you know, council's was really pleased to see the condition of your property. You know, thanks very much. It's almost like a little MOT for them.
It does. It does. No, I think that side of it is exceptionally good, and I think once we've got the enforcement side up and running, I think it just brings everything together. And the purpose of using this kind of technology is to make us more effective in what we do. And I think it will free up a lot of time for those cases what you talk about, those top end, those 25% of cases that we can really focus on as well. So no, it's very good.
That's our hope for sure. So we, of course, we'd like to be able to roll out absolutely everything, you know, on a certain day, and so it's all there. But the reality, the cost of building it and the time it takes to work through, I know it's had to come out in sort of in modules and sections, but hopefully now, in terms of if it was a race, 4-lap race, it feels like we're at least 3 laps into it now, and just like 1 more lap to go, and then we should have pretty much everything covered. But that I've realised that over the last 3 years, there's no end to it, because things change, legislation is going to be tweaked and changed, so it'll be ongoing. But in terms of, and you know, from I understand from a council perspective, using, and an officer's perspective, using multiple systems, it's just a pain in the bum, particularly if, you know, coming in and out of them and not having the integration of data that's where a lot of the efficiency comes from.
Yeah. No, it's very good.
So just to go on from Marta's case, you made a good point about people putting their landlord's details in, because sometimes people just want to touch base initially with you. They're scared of you making any contact with their landlord. And we had quite an issue when we developed our existing online form, because our IT team wants to call it, you know, report poor housing, and it's like, we do more than that. And we ended up just calling it private sector housing inquiry form, which cases for everything. So if someone's got bed bugs, you know, it's not disrepair, they can report it on that form. And you know, there might not be a landlord, it might just be some general advice, but the system will still cater for it quite easily with all the communications functionality. Yeah,
I'm thinking something like a property report, a property improvement. Generally, people want some improvement if it's the way that their property's being managed, or like you said, it's pests, or it could be. I don't know to what extent your teams get involved in the ASB around the PRS. Some do more than others, but so you don't have to have that form. At the moment, I don't think that form, Warm Forest don't currently show that form to the general public, but they do add all the information there, and that's how they get it into the system. So it can be used. The more efficient way is allow the tenant to fill it out, but you can also fill it out internally if needed. But all the feedback from, we want to make it as flexible as possible, so it can fit with all your requirements as much as, you know, and the forms are actually quite simple to do and to update, to tweak those. Most of the really tricky engineering is more in that sort of middle section of the demonstration, where the data is being used to move around. There's a lot of logic there.
Can I just ask one question, Russell? You know, you said on the letters that we actually send, or the emails we send, we can tweak and we can add whatever we want to add into that letter. Will the same functionality be having in terms of the licensing letters as well?
Yeah, so we are. That is probably one of the biggest asks now from customers, in terms of being able to have that editability on the licensing letters and the covering letters. So we are looking at that, because this technology, hopefully we can take it across into the property licensing module. Yeah, so I'm conscious of that. That's quite an important. Yeah, we've got the custom license conditions and the bespoke license conditions now, so you can add bespoke text to each license. But I understand some cases you want the ability to edit the.
Yes.
It needs, that covering letter probably needs be where you spend your time.
Okay. Thank you.
But was there anything else that I'd miss in the chat, or has everyone probably had enough of me?
Ian was asking about notice of entry, but I guess that would be the template that you create.
Yeah, that could be a really easy template within. So just to give you a sense of the templates, again, I'll switch on your training site, so you better go and have a look at those. So all the templates are in correspondence, letters. This is where you go to edit the licensing templates as well. There's all your property licensing templates, but now we've got disrepair templates. So I've broken it. Probably logged in. It works, I promise. Not at the moment. Anyway, they are there, I promise. So yeah. So that you can go in and for section 239s by email, by letter, yeah, you could easily do those via those templates now. All right.
Fantastic.
Shall we
Thank
call
you.
it a
Thanks very
day?
much. I think we've kept you an extra half an hour, haven't we?
No, no, it's my pleasure. I mean, I thank you all for your time. Your time is super valuable. And so, just to finish off, thanks again. And I will configure your training site so all that access is available. And if anyone needs a refresh on how to access the training site or any of those bits and pieces, just let your managers know, and then they can bug me, and I can make sure that you've got access.
Okay, and a big thank you to Westminster for letting us join your training session. So thank you ever so much.
No,
Thank
we'll be welcome.
You're
Matthew.
welcome. Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Russell.
Thanks, Russell.
Cheers.
Okay, thanks,
Bye.
Russell.
Thanks all. Bye.
Nice to see
Yeah.
you. Bye.
Thanks very
Bye.
much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye bye. Thank you.